start off by saying that I'm going to say a few things that are going to upset you, and you may be compelled to express your outrage in the comment section. If you feel that way, I'm not going to stop you. It doesn't mean I have to respond, but I'm going to share my thoughts and my feelings about what happened on this day 32 years ago, around the same time, and how things still haven't changed, even though things have changed slightly. You all know that April 29th in Simi Valley, 4 officers who were accused of beating a motorist, Rodney King, were going to have their verdicts read. I think we all remember that day, for those of us who were alive at that time, how we felt that moment in time. Were the 4 officers guilty of beating Rodney King, or was simply the fact that they were just quote unquote doing their job? So when the verdict was read, and I was somewhere else in the city doing my job with young people, the fellow teacher and I saw the verdicts, and each name that came up read the 2 words that will forever live in our hearts, in the memory: not guilty. April 29th is going to be remembered for Day of Words, but those are 2 words to one segment of this city we call LA, or Los Angeles, and across the nation and the world, that really struck a nerve with most people. However, to those people that the words not guilty meant joy, elation, justice was served. Those 4 officers were, in their hearts and their minds, quote unquote, wrongly accused of simply doing their job. You saw the videotape from Mr. George Holliday. You understood what happened. You knew and saw for yourselves 4 officers beat a black man, while 15, I believe, other police officers stood and watched. Okay, so the officers were acquitted of that crime, or they were acquitted of that alleged crime. When I say the word alleged here. However, that segment of the city, people my age, decided to vent their frustrations by going to Parker Center and merely just expressing outrage. If it was just only that, well, we would have just said it was a day of protest. But it turned out to be far more than that. It turned out to be a day that no one's ever going to forget, right? As the day went on, and at the same time that was happening, there was some police activity around the intersection of Florence and Normandy that you may have seen, in which the police officers were a block away dealing with another matter. There were young men that they were happening to talk to, and people got involved. Nothing outrageous at that time. But then again, when the verdict was heard and all went down, the surreal vision that my coworker and I saw: police cars leaving the area, multiple police cars, not down Florence, but leaving the area, period. They knew the area in South Los Angeles had gotten too hot. And At the same time that was happening, and I often mention this to my people and friends, there was a basketball game. It was a playoff game. And I'm not sure this had anything to do with what I'm about to say next, but there was a playoff game, and usually at the Forum, when traffic is filled at Manchester, people often take Florence as a way to get to the Forum. Now, seeing that was the case, that a trucker who happened to be in an intersection of Florence and Normandy, just doing what he's always done, his job. After the citizens got a little bit too hot in that intersection and showed their frustration, the police had left, everyone's all riled up, they pulled him out. And I'm not going to rehash what happened to him. You saw, if you were alive at that time, you saw exactly what happened to Mr. Denny. It's unfortunate what happened to him. Wish that people did not go that far, but people are angry to the point of nothing made any sense. They're going to react a certain way. That was the genesis of almost a week of rage personified. And for the people at Parker Center, it didn't turn out to a full-blown, I'll let you fill in that blank. But it turned into a melee in which, how can I say this, exemplified the anger and frustration people felt. On this day, and at the same time that happened, I'm sitting at home, made it from my job. Traffic was heavy on the street I was going down, and all I can just tell you is that I was angry and I was sad. Sad that the young people watching that whole scene who were left with us had to see that, and sad that the truth finally came out. The truth really came out. Didn't matter what happened to Mr. Denny, who could have died. Not Mr. Denny, but also Mr. King. Now, let me just say this. This is where you're going to really disagree with me, having felt the urge to do so already. There are two ways to see what happened on this day. Most people who look like would call it an unrest because we were not happy and were restless. So much our emotions just went out of control. And the other word that most of you watching this have been so accustomed to seeing and hearing and using your own phrases when you want to condemn someone like merely it was a riot. Unrest, riot, tomato. You can't call the whole thing off, right? This day was a sign to America's was live and unfiltered. This was the day. If you believe that we were all one and everyone is the same, doesn't matter your color, it doesn't matter what, maybe in principle. But when it comes to the justice system, definitely not true. For almost a week, people, celebrities, dignitaries, politicians, you name it, all had something to say when the mic was thrust in their face, urging for peace, calm, understanding, all of the buzzwords that you would say when something like this happens. And yet, it continued. Not just in South LA, but all over the city. Midtown, Koreatown, East LA. Not sure about the Valley. I don't think they would ever go that far. But in the city of LA proper, rage and frustration, and shops were burned, and people that had taken advantage of the community by establishing storefronts there, taking over storefronts there, who did not look like, were suddenly faced with the fact that they were not needed or wanted. And the people expressed themselves. But on the other hand, perhaps, this was an opportunity for the same store owners to take advantage of a situation where they know they're not wanted in the community and decided to take action. Just saying. A few days before the verdict, the seeds were already planted. I must remind you that if you ever find videotape or on this platform of news reporters going around the neighborhood, South Los Angeles, saying if it's a not guilty verdict, will you riot? Why would you ask citizens in this community if it's not a guilty verdict, would you riot? Of course, people that wear the tin hats would definitely tell you what they think of all that. But I'll leave it up to you, and I digress. This day wasn't about peace. It wasn't about brotherhood. It wasn't about coming together. It was about anger. Anger that a jury of not anyone's peers, but a jury decided that no harm, no foul. All good. And the police officers just acted like nothing happened. Just another day in the life. Our mayor, our police chief, who were at odds with each other at that time, continued to be at odds even then. Personally, I would just say that there were a lot of stories that came out of this day. The actor who helped people get to safety and was celebrated on conservative talk shows, especially one conservative host, and all the preaching of brotherhood coming together and the law is the law and everything like that. Not saying the actor said that. If he did, nothing I can do. But just stating that all this happened. To another actor who advocated picking up brooms, cleaning up the city, right? That's the easy part. The hard part, the challenging part, was to reform the police, which William Christopher did with his Christopher Commission. And our police force, instead of having one police chief who was there for an extended amount of time now has to serve 2 5-year terms. I can't tell you what it's like having to go through that. My wife would tell you, or she would tell anybody, that I suffered PTSD from that moment. Yeah, because everything that happened real close to me. The gunshots, the fires. You look on one side, one storefront is burned down. You look at the other side, another storefront is being burned down. Swap meets and liquor stores. Forward, 32 years later, finally one of the lots that was burned down held swap meets from block to block. It's now being changed over to a school, a little bit of retail, but mostly affordable housing. And in most cases, most of these lots are being turned into affordable housing. This is the LA that we're left with now. You know, I think when the Olympics come in 4 years and everyone looks at LA and the world and see how we've come together, how far we've come, they really don't know how far we have come. People can say nothing's really changed except a few faces, a few names, that's it. And other people would try to convince us things have changed. LA is getting better. In fact, we're all getting better. I leave it up to you, ladies and gentlemen. I leave it up to you. My epilogue to all this is that from someone who's lived in South Los Angeles nearly his entire life, except for a 5-year journey to Northern California. Wow. This area has changed somewhat. The gang violence that used to be so prevalent here has quieted down. Thank goodness and thank God for that. The police, not so much the drama or the corruption that used to happen occasionally. Everything seems to be back to normal now, if there ever was such a thing as normal here in this community. But I want everyone to understand one thing. A riot is perceived by those who do not have any idea how the oppressed class lives. Unrest is an understanding that the oppressed class knows things have to get better. So while many of you see a riot, those of us who know see an unrest. And one thing we can be all certain, whether which side of the fence that you're on. If nothing changes dramatically in our society, if there's no peace as far as people like being judged by an unfair justice system, then nothing will ever change. And this will be more frequent until the next Rodney King comes along or the next Reginald Denny comes along. Think about that. End transmission.